What's up, Send Squad? Welcome back to another Brawl Stars video. Today we're going to be talking about how to aim better in Brawl Stars. Obviously, aiming is an extremely crucial part of the game, and although you sort of get used to the aiming with a specific brawler if you play them for a while, if you switch between brawlers a lot, it can get a bit difficult to adjust your aiming. Because of that, you might be playing worse than you can be playing. So I'm going to talk about how you want to aim depending on the brawler you're using, and how other people are going to try to dodge those attacks, and how you can change your aim to still hit people who are trying to dodge your shots. So one of the most important calculations we need to consider in order to determine how to aim is the specific brawler's projectile speed. So how long it takes from after they release the attack to the time when their attack reaches its max possible range. Because in that time, your opponent is going to be able to move any distance to the left or to the right or up or down or any which way. So you obviously don't want to just aim directly at an opponent because they'll have plenty of time to move out of the way, and by the time the projectile reaches them, it won't be anywhere near them. And unfortunately, we don't really have the projectile speeds of all the brawlers in game. So I went and calculated all the different projectile speeds for brawlers that have a pretty thin attack that you're going to need to aim properly. So going from the quickest to the slowest, we have 8-Bit and Mr. P, who each have a 3/5 seconds projectile speed. We have Colette and Colt with a 2/3 second projectile speed. Piper, Bo, Nani, and Surge, when he's at level 3, each have a 3/4 second projectile speed. Rico has a 4/5 second projectile speed, and Brock, Jesse, and B all have a 1 second projectile speed. So it ranges anywhere from 3/5 of a second to 1 full second. So basically, you want to be aiming where your opponent is going to be after those 3/5 to a whole second. So the maximum number of tiles that a player can actually travel in that time depends on their movement speed. So the highest movement speed in the game without any buffs or anything is about 2.73 tiles per second. The lowest is obviously 8-Bit with 1.93 tiles per second. But on average, almost every brawler is between 2.4 and 2.6 tiles per second. So I'll just use 2.5 as a general average. If it's plus or minus a few tenths of tiles per second, overall it's not going to have much of an effect because there's going to be error in your movement and your aiming and everything. So it's all going to be close enough anyway. So we're just going to use 2.5 tiles per second as the average movement speed for all brawlers. So if we just multiply those 2.5 tiles per second times the time that it takes for projectile speed, we can figure out how far an opponent is going to move after we release our attack to the time when the attack actually gets near them. So for 8-Bit and Mr. P, opponents are going to be able to move 1.5 tiles. For Colette and Colt, opponents are going to be able to move 1.65 tiles. For Piper, Surge, Bo, and Nani, they're going to be able to move 1.88 tiles. For Rico, they're going to be able to move 2 tiles, and for Brock, Jesse, and B, they're going to be able to move 2.5 tiles. So if an opponent is just moving in a straight line, you want to aim that many tiles in front of them in the direction they're moving. And then if they keep moving in that direction, by the time the attack gets to them, it'll be right on top of their position. And now this is assuming that they're going to be at the very end of your range, but if they're not at your max range, then you sort of have to scale it down proportionally. So if they're at half of your max range, then you want to aim half of the distance in front of them that you normally would if they were at the end of your max range. And also, this is assuming a big thing is that your opponents aren't actually changing direction. So that brings us into the topic of dodging. So when you're facing another brawler, there are several different ways they will try to dodge your attacks. Obviously, one of the easiest ways is to just move backwards and move farther away from the attack so that they're out of range. And basically, there's no chance that you can hit them if they dodge in that way. Or obviously, you could also just go behind a wall. That's another great way to dodge, and it's impossible for your opponent to hit you if you are behind the wall. But in other situations, typically where you're not just 1v1ing a brawler, there are like 3 different types of dodges I typically see. Usually at really low trophies, like right when you're starting to push a new brawler, like 100 to 300 trophies, people will just be moving in a straight line. So essentially they're not really dodging at all, they just keep moving in an effort to throw you off. So in that case, you can just attack in front of them in the distances that we were talking about before. But then if you get up into a bit higher trophy range, like 300 to 550, that middle trophy range, people will start to do what I call a single dodge. So essentially they'll be looking at you, and when you release your attack, they're going to react to that and start moving in the opposite direction because they think that you're going to aim ahead of them. So if they move in the opposite direction, they'll be moving farther away from where the attack is going to land. So in this case then, the best way to hit them is to actually aim exactly where your opponent is, or just a little bit behind them. Because right when you release your attack, they're going to continue moving forward just a little bit until they react to that attack and decide to move backward. And so they'll have moved forward a bit from where you were initially aiming, and then they're going to move backward, and by the time they cross that point where they initially were, your attack is probably already going to be right where they are. So essentially there was net zero displacement. They didn't actually move at all. They just moved forward and then backward to the same spot. Now, if they have quick reaction time, they'll be able to move back a bit farther than they moved forward. So that's why you maybe want to aim slightly behind them. But if you see your opponents doing your single dodge, don't aim in front of them like you would if they weren't dodging at all. And then at even higher trophies, 550 to like 650, I would say, people start doing double dodges, which is essentially just equivalent to random movement. But typically what they'll do is right before they think you're about to shoot, they will start moving in a different direction than they were originally moving in, and then after you shoot, they're going to start moving back in the original direction that they were moving. So essentially they try to fake you out into thinking they're doing a single dodge, but then end up dodging again back in the original direction. So in this case, if you know you're about to shoot, you want to take note of where your opponent is, and then you want to aim exactly there about a half second before you're about to shoot. And then because they're moving back and forth so much, by the time your attack reaches them, they'll probably walk directly into the attack because they're moving back and forth so much. If you see people doing this, it's never a good idea to commit and aim really far in front of them or really far behind them, because they're basically just going to be jittering around pretty much in the same spot. So basically the safest play here is, like I was saying, keep in mind their position where they are, and then a half second later you want to attack in that position regardless of where they've moved to, because they're probably eventually going to return to that position. So those are the ways that you can counter people dodging. And above 650 trophies, you can usually see people doing some combination of these three. They try to be unpredictable, so that way you can't just counter the dodges like you normally would. So at those high trophy levels, what you really want to do is look at how your opponents are dodging. If they're really sticking to one type of dodge, then you can aim accordingly and counterplay in the same ways we were talking about before. Because I think a lot of people, when they're not really focusing on the game, sort of subconsciously stick to one of those dodging types that they're pretty comfortable with. Now, sometimes people do really shake up their dodging patterns and it can be hard to predict, but you sort of have to keep track of them as you go. What sort of dodging are they trying to do now? Because a lot of time in the heat of the battle, if they dodge once and it works, they're just going to do the same dodge again, because they don't think that you're going to realize that they're dodging and switch up their dodging accordingly. So usually if they dodge in one particular way, then you can just shoot again as a counterplay to that same type of dodge, and you'll usually be able to hit them. So if they react right after you shoot and go in a different direction, then the next time you attack, just aim directly at them and they'll probably walk right into the bullet. And that's going to let you land a lot more shots with these sniper and long range types of brawlers. If you like this video, don't forget to join the Send Squad by subscribing, turning on notifications, going to your settings and enabling notifications there as well. But that's all for today, guys, so see you later.